Good morning, everyone. All good. Good morning, two little domes. Today is indeed Monday. We are recording because we couldn't pray otherwise. Health, a super important thing, but it's not said that we won't meet again this week.
Oh, probably yes.
Probably yes. We keep our fingers crossed for that. And welcome on Monday, Pre-Connector, October 28th. You are watching us this evening. The material that was planned for today is therefore airing tomorrow. So tomorrow we will meet with Christoph Kordyła and his Cosmic Matters, which he knows very well. Best regards.
We definitely send our regards. And today we will start with a topic, very interesting. I look at what is happening in Russia. I look at what is happening in Ukraine, and I just feel immense anger when I see that Selidowe fell solely due to the inability to think of the Ukrainian political elite, because they were not allowed to secure both flanks, defensive positions, and the defense in Selidowe was flanked, as a result of which the Ukrainians had to leave the town. And this was caused by political reasons. The commander of the defense of Selidowe is not liked in banking.
I will say that in conversations directly in Ukraine with people, with privates, non-commissioned officers, and junior officers, that eventually one of the units will not hold out, will fall into Kyiv for sure, and what they blamed on their enemies will remain with Yermak.
A little rug? That's right. Exactly. Because they all say exactly the same thing.
And Bezuchwa too. Their hands immediately drop to the rifle when the topic of power in Kyiv is mentioned.
Bank Yermak? Yes.
The most delicate words they say there are not suitable for repetition because they immediately do not agree with it.
Because they are omitted in all dictionaries. My buddies who are fighting now say the same. And I think that Mariana Bezuchwa should quickly evacuate her valuable bust from Ukraine, which supposedly protects the entire purchase.
That is one sufficient thing in her.
Yes, exactly. But we are going. Why? Why am I angry? Because the last few days, for health reasons, I was somewhat wiped out. I spent nights surfing, and you could say digging through various Russian channels, and saw how it happens from the Russian side. And from the Russian side, what is happening, they themselves assess it with a short word, pizdiek. And why pizdik? Because now we will delve into the meanders of the Russian offensive from a rather unexpected side. Torek. Russian soldiers are rotting while alive. They complain. They recorded a video. They are not being evacuated. Wounds are rotting. They say we are rotting while alive. They have no ammunition supplies. They have 1 magazine per rifle. They have no medicine, no food. They haven't drunk for 3 days. Of course, they do not protest. They carry out meat assaults. They die, but they are rotting. And this recording caused outrage among Russian mill bloggers who spread it. They said that the lies of the commanders about the control over the territory that we supposedly took are the cause of the problems. Natis Veterana. This is a crushing group for the commanders who left our boys in a ruined building in Torek without food, water, ammunition, and medical assistance. Commander of the 132nd Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces, have you completely lost your mind? Our soldiers are rotting alive on the front line, and you don't care. The Chief of Medical Staff and others responsible should be punished for such an approach to 300. I have seen many things over the last 2.5 years, but this is really messed up. Now it will return, vanished. This is a very interesting group. I recommend it to all those who have any medical education, interests in rescuers, because it shows the medicine of the battlefield in Russia from the inside. And now this group points to the commanders and the conditions of the battlefield, especially the constant threat from drones. They write like that. The specificity of the current war is that if you are injured, evacuation may and will probably take a very long time. And the reasons range from the indifference of the command to the objective impossibility of doing so due to hostile activity from unmanned aerial vehicles. This means that the ability to help oneself and one's companions is becoming increasingly important. But everyone says, all groups say, all so-called veterans say, and doctors, and Russian rescuers, yes, they say that on the Russian front lines, medical care is often lacking or even non-existent. Meanwhile, in the ration of the day, they say that medically trained personnel are being held back from working on the front lines because there are too few of them. The Russians, Alyechin, whom I mentioned due to the scandal with Putin's MILF, namely Anastasia Kashevarova, attributes the whole situation to a combination of factors, mainly chronic disorganization, that is, chaos and shortages of equipment. He writes,
Well, I would also mention, let's not forget about the sealed first aid kits that are being accounted for.
Well, that's exactly why I've already talked about this. I've already mentioned that we have a story about the sealed first aid kits that are... Wait, if you've just touched on this topic, we need to return to the thread where it was mentioned that the first aid kit is accounted for separately and its contents are accounted for separately as well, especially the anti-nausea medications. Why? Because anti-nausea medications are usually older generation drugs and contain, for example, opioids. And if there are opioids, of course, a red light goes off for someone in Moscow, as Alekhine wrote, indicating that soldiers will be using drugs. They will take the painkillers out of the first aid kit and will be using them to get high. So, what will we do?
It's cheaper to buy from Chechens who are guarding the rear of the front to prevent anyone from escaping.
And it's faster and easier. Of course it is. They always supposedly have fresh and good goods.
And I even say that there is a problem in Poland because right now the supplies of various types of syringes for our army are running out. Perhaps some have also gone east, but no one has been producing that in Poland for a long time. And even private pharmaceutical entrepreneurs would like to do such things, but no one wants to give a proper guaranteed order. Either we will take risks ourselves, entrepreneurs, or we don't know where from, because it is currently selling out worldwide.
Easy. We'll literally get it from Uncle Sam's stock for zillions of coins. Well, that's our tactic. We take it off the shelf for zillions of coins. I don't even want to talk about it anymore because, we complain about Ukraine and what's happening there, but they have a mess and we have a brothel. That's the whole difference. Unfortunately, more and more. But let's return to the Russian sheep and what they call the beautiful word pizdieks. What about those first aid kits? Because we will continue to talk about it. So, for the settlement of the first aid kit, 10 documents are needed. These 10 documents are filled out by the deputy battalion commander, and he takes care of all of it. And now there is one more thing, but it has to go through the sergeant. It has to go through the company, which means the company commander has to sign the settlement and must remember that for every damn first aid kit he doesn't settle, he will be trained. That's one thing. Furthermore, there are currently no medical officers nor any medical personnel in the companies, as Alyechin writes. In the company, there is usually one non-commissioned officer with some rudimentary knowledge. He is lucky if he has been trained in a 2-week medical first aid course, but there are also those who learn everything on the front lines. Imagine such a person who is doing a puncture for the first time in their life. I can imagine, not great. But anyway, they have those first aid kits, right? And each first aid kit must be settled with 10 documents. But that's not all yet, because as we said a moment ago, painkillers are settled separately. And for these painkillers, there are 2 special 4-page forms that must be filled out for each distribution of these medications from one first aid kit. How many first aid kits are there per platoon?
There was usually one.
Well, yes, but it's about personal first aid kits, Maciek. That means theoretically, every soldier should have one. Right. Theoretically as many as there are soldiers, right? But there are also those painkillers there. So what you're saying, One first aid kit is the so-called company first aid kit, of which there are several per company, right? One for 30 people. And at this moment, a problem arises because, firstly, those company first aid kits are no longer available, and secondly, those individual first aid kits are also no longer available because either they are for 3 or 4 people or they haven't been accounted for. Because if someone goes missing, the commander just waves his hand and says, "No, I'm not reporting those shortages, because how could it be? Morozov lost it somewhere. Kurbiansky is missing because he was shot. Where is that? The first aid kit is there, but it's unclear. Someone else is also missing. I don't know. Why the hell should I struggle with this? No, I'll write that we have as many first aid kits as there are people. And how many people? Let them count for themselves. How many are left after the last attack? Well, at this moment, there is one first aid kit for every 3. 1 for 4, and those are personal first aid kits. What you're saying, those company first aid kits were well equipped and they somehow disappeared. And where did they go? To the battalion staff? To the supply officer, where they are kept under lock and key so that, God forbid, they don't get lost, because accounting for these first aid kits is just an obstacle course, because each group of items has to be accounted for separately. The same goes for the supplies.
I mean, right now I'm telling you I'm supplementing my first aid kit with various hemostatics, both those in tubes to insert into a wound if necessary, gauzes and so on. It will cost several hundred zlotys, but it's better to have it.
Are you going?
I will go once more again.
It's necessary. It's necessary. And I wanted to go, but the doctor forbade me because, well, unfortunately, I will be healthy. But if you change your mind and you have a Category B driver's license, we can manage. Okay, let's move on. Let's keep going. I will remember. And now Alyechin says, well, we can roughly simulate such a dialogue. The company commander comes to the battalion commander and says, I have 300 on the position with festering wounds. We need to extract them. Battalion commander, find me a replacement for them. Company commander, but I don't have any, and we need to find some. Battalion commander, but I don't have any vehicles or means of evacuation. Find them for me. Company commander, but where are they? Maybe I can at least send them some medicine. Battalion commander, I agree. Send it to them. Platoon commander, but we don't have any Mawics left. Battalion commander, but I don't have any either. We will search. And so the search drags on for days and weeks. Alyechin blames higher-ranking field commanders who lie to their superiors about successes on the battlefield for future orders, which he believes is a common and persistent problem for almost 3 years. In this case, here is the photo. Injured soldiers in Torek cannot be evacuated because this area is not fully controlled by Russia, and the commanders stated otherwise. And here I sent a screenshot that shows this white sandy area. Are you uploading it now, or will you upload it later? This sandy area is supposedly what the field commanders told Moscow has been captured. On the other hand, they were in the right sector, and it is practically Ukrainians, while those here are sitting in Torek, so they are sitting in some basement, and either the Ukrainians will pull them out, or they will meet their end there. Right? But officially indeed, they could have been evacuated because the field commanders told higher up to the brigade commander that this is already all ours.
Yeah.
Next story, yes. The battalion commander and everyone higher up are saying, well, this is already ours, and there is a unit ready for battle there. That means those who are currently dying from their wounds. Now, the most important thing. What decision will the command make when the report says that everyone has everything? Or, as a certain journalist from Moscow said, they have a colossal advantage in everything. And what kind? Oh, go ahead. Oh, go. Soldiers have to evacuate on their own because this is our territory. As a result, soldiers are killed not by the wreck of evacuation, but by many other lies that permeate the commands of many units. And maybe the brigade commander would be willing to do something. But his previous lies and everything else that would need to change from the top, that is, it would actually need to be established. That lies would be intolerable and punished more severely than anything else that already holds him back. The brigade commander has killed many soldiers, and Moscow needs to stop demanding only good news, and not scolding commanders who bring bad news, but to accept them with some gratitude, because here we know where we have problems. There is a reason to fix the situation, not to cause a buildup of problems until they explode in our faces. Of course, subordinates need to be trained to also be able to bring bad news. No, not to soften them, but to bring them with analysis, conclusions, and suggestions. Then the system will start learning from mistakes and problems, and thus will not allow them to repeat in the future, and will fix them quickly. Here we can learn from the West, from that West which we so despise. Well, now, of course, wounded Russian soldiers can get out of the front lines. They can. Guess when? When they have money to bribe doctors. And here, Mamatov, such a blogger, Platon Mamatov, claims that yes, first of all, commanders prevented doctors and paramedics from serving at the front. And so on his YouTube channel right here, he clearly and explicitly states that he does not publish the story of a 23-year-old soldier who had bad luck with the withdrawal. He does not want to feed enemy propaganda with tasty reading. He writes ambiguously, but we know that he is talking about a soldier who died from wounds while crawling to a medical point. A very interesting story. The author Platon also talked to a doctor who served in the war zone under a contract with the Ministry of Health. She was forbidden to do so because she had a quarrel with a military gendarmerie person, where often only crazy people serve. That's what she literally said. Wounded fighters are forced to fight. That's what she said. Due to the decisions of medical officers with the brigades, but who can be bribed to make a decision favorable for the injured? In the unit, those who bought a Category D, unfit, go home, while those who really need to be discharged due to health issues and have no money, the military doctor writes as fit for service. As a result, only a few are discharged due to health reasons. The doctor says that frontline medicine largely depends on volunteers. Among other things, they sent an ultrasound machine sent by volunteers from Ulyanovsk. The shortages in medical personnel are so endemic that this personnel cannot even be released from the brigade. And what is it about? It is about the fact that the command's position is that there are so few doctors that they should not appear outside the hospital. We know that doctors are being mobilized massively at the expense of regular health care. What is happening to them? We don't know. A paramedic is usually with them. At most, a doctor and a paramedic can handle a very serious case, but only at a field medical dressing point. Nurses do exist. Periodically. The Ministry of Health tries to send them to units, but the local command is categorically opposed to women on the front line. Women do not have enough strength to pull someone away. They shoot poorly, and they dig trenches even worse. What the hell do they need them here for?
I'll tell you that we probably saw hallucinations, and it's her that we talked about. We both saw the material related to this lie. Because such a beautifully made dugout, furnished with panel floors, finished walls, bathrooms, furniture, bedrooms, and there were 2 or 3 Sisters of Mercy moving around.
Yes, exactly. Except that these were paid Sisters of Mercy, and it was far behind the front. And here is an interesting note from this doctor, who says that field medical dressing points, with brigades obviously have their own doctors, they obviously have their own paramedics, and what do they deal with? They deal with the hemorrhoids of the staff officers instead of the wounded from our brigades. They do not have access to the wounded at all, often. Why is that? Because those 300 who are lightly wounded are immediately classified as fit for service. And those who are seriously wounded and who may survive or may not are taken away from the field bases. As a result, we often do not see these wounded at all.
So theoretically, the healthcare service is even there, but it does not receive the material to work with.
But it does receive. The most serious case was like this. The brigade commander, who severely burned himself with coffee, and not just his legs, as the doctor stated.
Oh dear. But one cannot say that the Russian state does not care for its soldiers. It even sends doctors to the front line. These are simply those shameless patients, indeed wounded in action, who do not want to go to the doctor for diagnosis and assistance.
And here speaks a trio. This Russian mill blogger indeed says, if you are injured, you can only fly to your buddy. He will, probably, if he can, take you from the battlefield and pull you to the nearest medical point, if you find such a point. But if you are able, do not show yourself to the battalion commander, because otherwise, regardless of where you are injured, you will still be directed to the grinder.
But there is one more thing. It is important to note that documents were just recently found in the field, in which all those from the given prisoner exchange package, who unfortunately returned to Russia, all ultimately ended up in a meat assault.
And we will tell you about that later. We will move on to what happens if, God forbid, if you are evacuated, you will end up as a Russian in a field hospital. It turns out that you have serious wounds. Everything went well, and even the ministry paid. You, for those wounds. Dennis M., a contract soldier from Kostroma, published a video in which he talks about such a story. He volunteered for the war 6 months ago, joining the 331st Airborne Assault Regiment of the Guard because he was a big guy, twice wounded in combat and treated in the hospital. The Russian government awarded him 6 million rubles in compensation, 5 times more than the average salary in Russia, and this caught the interest of his officers, the battalion commanders. A week of battalion and brigade commanders. A week later, after returning to his unit in Luhansk, his commanders demanded that he return all the money. In the video recording, they told him that they needed a generator, that they had to buy one, and that he had millions, so he should also buy them phones. He replied that he had nothing, thinking, screw this shit. They said that if I didn't want to go to the front, then I had to do it. And if I didn't want to go to the front, I had to decide. I said, okay, screw this. I only gave 200,000, and that was too little. The money was supposed to be used to support his units with generators, batteries, and cameras. But those were just invoices, because in reality, iPhones were bought for the commander and the political officer. He was forced to extort money from other soldiers who received compensation for injuries, and these soldiers were not from Brigade 331, but from other brigades as a kind of, an extortionist.
Yes, an extortionist, yes.
I might get hit by a grenade soon, he says gloomily. After he sent the recording to his relatives, he was exposed, arrested, hung upside down, beaten so badly that he ended up in the intensive care unit.
I already know that part of the story.
Yes, his whereabouts are unknown. His mother was supposed to go to Ugansk to find him, while his friends said he died in a meat assault, where he was sent as a lead. He was promoted to a senior role and sent as the lead for the meat assault.
That means if one can find pathology anywhere in Russia through a lens, one should start looking for that pathology with that lens specifically in the Russian army. And unfortunately, this is starting to happen even in those elite units of the Russian army that were previously thought to be better, namely the VDV, which was supposed to have that esprit de corps and so on. It turns out that the only thing they learned better and more is that they also accepted more than one prisoner from correctional facilities.
To murder and rob even their own, that's right, banditry. And now Russian commanders, they expect that only 2% of soldiers from the assault units assigned to these assault units will survive the attacks, and they will punish the soldiers who survive, assuming that if they are still alive, they did not follow orders. And now we have 2 Russian soldier convicts who are fleeing across Russia after desertion. And everyone is looking for them. Everyone. But they seem to be receiving various help from people. Why? These are rappers. These are rappers who constantly record new videos, upload them online, calling themselves Vyacheslav Trutnev and Dmitry Ostrovsky. And in their latest video, they accuse their commander's deputy of imprisoning and causing the deaths of soldiers who survived the attacks. They publicized complaints against Commander Prokop with these videos, and this time they made accusations against the deputy commander of the 109th Regiment, who used the call sign Caspian. In July 2024, 15 soldiers from their unit survived the attack and returned to Russian positions, but they were, in total, lined up by Caspian. They say he accused them of not completing the mission, and the survival rate allegedly should not exceed 2%. Several of them were injured, and they were not allowed to go to the hospital. One of them was lying down and was connected to an IV by a medic, but he was forced to stand up straight, while Caspian yelled at them, "Why the hell did you survive? You have no right. The convicts have only a 2% survival rate." Well, they did cover a certain number of meters towards the Ukrainians, and that was all that was necessary. It was known that this attack would not succeed. The Ukrainians were shooting accurately and a lot. And why did he think they didn't do it, didn't continue the attack, even though he saw that this attack would not succeed? It is neither clear nor understandable at all. In the form, so to speak, of punishment, he threw them into Zindani. And in that Zindani, they were not fed in that basement, they were not given water, they were given a half-liter bottle for all those who were there, for those 15, but just so they wouldn't die of thirst, that's all. 3 injured died immediately in Zindani. He sent the remaining 12, some injured, some still relatively whole, to carry out the assault without weapons, without vests, without anything. Everyone died in the attack. They killed their own people. In short, if something doesn't go their way, human life means nothing to those brutes. In short, Singh, Trutnev, and Ostrovsky. The deceased were listed as deserters, not as missing, probably to deny their relatives any compensation. That's how deserters are treated. With us, as long as the body is not retrieved, we are registered as deserters, not even as missing in action. All those who are unfortunately and tragically killed due to mistakes in the process are considered missing. Russian, battalion, commander, recorded here, and this is exactly the same regiment, the same division, an order to shoot anyone who refuses to attack. Those refusing, interestingly, the supposedly English term refusnik is used. More and more often, meaning one who refuses. Yes, refusnik. The 500 must be shot. Anyone who refuses to listen to the radio order and to advance in the attack is to be driven by artillery and tank fire. All retreating are treated as traitors. Traitors are sent to assault or shot on the spot. All who fall into enemy hands are traitors. As there are no longer any camps or prisons for them, they must be immediately directed to assault groups, even if they do not have the appropriate weapons.
So those who return from Ukrainian captivity already have tattooed posthumously, victim of the meat assault.
Yes.
Here is the story. No one is a greater enemy to the Russians than themselves.
I mean the Russians. Here is the story of a 59-year-old librarian who was called up, mobilized due to the insufficient number. And since librarians don't usually have much money, he couldn't buy his way out.
By
That's right. He was assigned, of course, well, where could a guy in glasses be assigned? He didn't manage to be assigned to the artillery, meaning he went through artillery training, but a drunk battalion commander was looking for people for a meat assault, so he just dragged him along with others and pointed, "That one. That one. Well, send him." There were some words spoken, whether it was 5 years or something else, so they went. He was wounded, but lightly, and he pretended to be dead. He pretended to be dead when the Ukrainians came and took him, eagerly surrendering his weapon, and then he found out that he would be shot or killed, like 500 others. And supposedly, according to the stories of my friends, he knelt before the Ukrainian battalion commander so that he wouldn't be exchanged, saying that he was willing to do anything because he said, "I want to live." So what now? Well, supposedly he works according to his qualifications somewhere in, how should I put it, in the background.
I listen to the bureaucracy.
He catalogs Russian books, far from the army, various others. Supposedly he is very happy. Pshem. He talks a lot of things voluntarily about the relations prevailing in the Russian army. Of course, no one will provide names because he has family in Russia and claims that he will never return to Russia.
This doesn't surprise me at all. Russia is one of the places that most eagerly grinds up its citizens into
minced meat, into whatever it may be. But what they also do, our colleague Janek found a beautiful picture of the Higher Officer School of Spetsnaz in Novosibirsk, where for 2 years this school has existed in tents, because for 2 years they have been getting nothing.
No, this is a training element.
That's right.
Our must be resistant to everything.
Yes, so for 2 years they have been living in these tents without running water. So what did I find on what Janek posted? I tried to find out, and it turned out that yes, of course. And even here, a group from Novosibirsk on Telegram claims that these future officers, or rather cadets, can be easily recognized by their smell.
No, wait a moment. Do you remember the stories from Vietnam that the Vietnamese recognized Americans because they had a different smell of sweat, especially when the null shapes worked? So then they ate the same diet as the Vietnamese, so they wouldn't be recognized by their smell. And this is definitely the element of camouflage.
Yes. Yes. Maybe. If they smell distinctly, no one will notice, right? And now also, Janek. We greet you, Janek.
We greet you.
Yes, he found a very interesting assessment of the Russian BWP 1 and 2 in combat. The shortened version is wrong. The full version, disposable equipment, is used to transport assault groups to the combat area and for cavalry's disposable attacks, from which there is no return. Old and worn out despite the 2000s inspections after many years of being in long-term storage. The battalion set today constitutes 70-80% of the authorized strength. About 50% of the BWP finishes the control marches. And we know that such a march control is not much, as it is 10-15 kilometers. He should really drive it, but he doesn't. 50% do not drive. Only machines that have undergone a major overhaul are fit for battle. I will say that a major overhaul is very rarely encountered in the case of these BWP 1-2. And only the 2s and only some facilities do it.
Because most often it is a maintenance overhaul. When taking it out of deep storage. The paint coatings have been replaced. Khaki paint conceals the deficiencies.
That's right. There is a saying in our army. Garden paint will keep it all together. And to all this, let us add that in reality, oh no, everything yet. And this is not everything yet. Lack of any modern guided anti-tank missiles. The actual combat value of such a BMP is a direct derivative of the quality of the barrel, and these are rusted inside and heavily worn. No one monitors this when taking it out of deep storage. The same applies to the engine and other systems of the vehicles. All technical parameters are lower than declared by at least several dozen %. Without a functioning 2A42 cannon, it is useless. Crews. Trained crew members are a rarity. And still, there is a lack of tactical training, only technical. There is no effective protection in place. Consequently, tactics. Pray, you are going at full speed. Has anyone seen a withdrawing BMP or one firing an ATGM or resupplying ammunition? The best quality BMPs from equipment and armament storage bases have been sold to foreign recipients in the past 2 decades. And now, this is a matter known to us as well. A full landing in bulletproof vests with weapons and ammunition does not fit in the BWP.
And on top of that, there is no chance at all?
No, but it doesn't fit with us either. 5 can fit. 5 can fit because it just doesn't work.
And there should be exactly 4 sitting on each side.
And if you set up a grenade launcher, that's already a whole different story. And when you want to transport the anti-tank missiles and soldiers, it becomes a problem. Everyone is like sardines.
But generally the Russians made the BWP-2 in such a way that it had anti-tank missiles in the turret. No one has seen that for a long time.
No, I haven't seen it. First of all, the launchers are dismantled because there are no missiles. That's one.
And secondly, it's also a matter of ammunition for the 2.42 cannon. The simplest anti-tank providing penetration of 27 mm at a distance of 1,000 meters, which means that a slightly armored M113 can survive. From the front side.
Yes, that means, to be honest, the Ukrainian BWP-1 without additional armor will be hit, but with additional armor, there will be some problem.
The most valuable ammunition in both BWP-1 and BWP-2 is fragmentation ammunition.
Yes, there isn't. One that doesn't exist. And here we bow to the process we watched with some astonishment, namely the removal of the Grom. Cannons from the BWP-1.
From the destroyed BWP vehicles?
Yes, and from that field artillery.
Yes, a bit of a fortress type because it has no wheels. And so on.
No, they have wheels. Oh, they have wheels with what? Yes, they have wheels. They have sets for transport. I would say they are like grenade launchers. Fortress grenade launchers, simply put, yes. It is even transported. And at battalions. At least I have caught information several times that it can replace mortars at battalions. From the distributor, they have mortars. They do not receive those mortars. 120. Instead, they receive these.
There is fragmentation ammunition for that, so it will achieve a maximum range of 4,500 meters. That's half less than the 120 millimeter mortar, but better than nothing.
Yes, but it is not a steep angle weapon.
No, it is not.
No. If the Ukrainians hide behind some wall, I wish you good luck in breaking that wall with this weapon.
Yes, but you know what? It's interesting exactly when it comes to the sight. What is the sight adapted from? Because they won't be able to take the 1PN22M2 sight from the infantry fighting vehicle.
No. What is the sight adapted from for this? And here you are surprised.
No.
Zilch utridua.
But this is also not a common weapon, so someone must be stealing it intensively.
No, it comes from what happens. I mean, I have seen the ZU-23-2 twice. I know because I recognized it as I had it in stock. However, there is indeed information that they are adapted. As for the rest, well, They say it comes from whatever happens, as long as it is relatively light.
Well, it still needs to be aligned somehow, the optical axis of the barrel with this.
Well, those are such details. Well, you will shoot along the barrel, roughly in the direction of the sight.
I remember about Poland. I remember a story from World War II that indeed some battalion of our People's Army of Poland was preparing for some action, and they had a platoon of 45 millimeter guns in the battalion.
And they had, yes.
There was such a thing. Unfortunately, during the fighting, they lost the sights they had, and the battalion commander caught some sergeant or someone and said, I need to have this because we have to neutralize those bunkers somehow, otherwise the Germans will shoot us, right? You have time until tomorrow morning before we go into the attack. And there he wrote in the elephants doesn't know where from. He arranged for a sight for 145. Some guard unit in the area was looking for it later because they didn't know if they drank it or if it was stolen, but they didn't have it. And on the second of those guns, the battalion commander saw a welded front sight and notch in the morning. Was it possible?
It was possible. Well, I will tell you that yes. I will tell you that I heard such stories, including field modifications to 76 from the destroyed German 105mm guns. I heard that too. Even though it was completely different, but still, it was somehow possible.
But one thing must be said reliably. The 76.2 ohm ZIS-3 gun, the so-called half gun, was even divisional. It was one of the best universal guns, at the same time from the manufacturers. Back then, it was truly one of the best products of its kind in this war,
providing a really significant advantage over German tanks at long distances. And let's remember that generally all German artillery pieces or all German anti-tank guns had a longer reach.
They were better. They were often much heavier.
Well, I know. Pak 43. Well, that's a Polish design. Moreover, yes, experiences were used in designing the famous A-19, which has a larger caliber. But you know that in the Ukrainian war, they gave it up because the Ukrainians had a few of those guns. Why was it abandoned? First, the weight, mobility, and second, a crew of 9 people.
Yes. So it's a nightmare. And one more thing. Unfortunately, we are increasingly coming to the conclusion that the Russians have probably started production based on old documentation of endemic types of ammunition, which is only possible because they mainly import the most commonly used ones from Korea. Bloomberg data says that.
We will talk about that in a moment.
But they have launched production of old endemic types of this kind of ammunition for 152 millimeters, of which they still have some quantities, as well as other specific types regarding the charges.
But they have to, that's why you say perhaps, all right, so this is, in a way, military intelligence. 30% of the ammunition is Russian, 60% from North Korea, and 10% from Iran. A decrease in the Russian advantage over Ukrainians in the amount of shelling, 8-1 at the beginning of the year, a decisive advantage for the Russians, 3-1 in the summer of 2024, 2-1 in the fall of 2024, specifically September. Predictions for January 2025 are 1-1.
That's how it looks. Good. Predictions.
Yes. And here we will talk about Russian losses, because what do they say? These are only losses from the last battles, meaning the last month, or even less, the last 3 weeks in the Kursk region. 66,662 killed, 10,446 wounded, approximately 711 missing. These are data picked up from the Russians. 45 completely destroyed tanks, 256 completely destroyed BMPs, 565 completely destroyed trucks, armored vehicles, including BTR-82A, approximately 99 units of towed artillery and 5 units of rocket artillery.
More or less the equivalent of 2 brigades worth of equipment has been lost.
To the sand. Now here it is. What we know thanks to our colleagues, also thanks to our colleagues, what we know about those famous contract payments. What did I find? Moscow region 2.3 million rubles, that's 400,000 upwards. Lipetsk region 1.5 million rubles, 300,000 up. Tula region 2.5 million rubles, 1.5 million up. And now, generally speaking, the top 10 is almost 2.3 million rubles. Well now.
No, and Belgorod went for 3 million.
Please hold on, wait. The official record is currently held by the city of Khanty-Mansiyski, of the region, an independent region, right? There it is, 3.75 million rubles. And now, what did Yanek find? Yanek found that, not infrequently, this money offered is purely propagandistic and theoretical because it won't be received. You need to be there for at least a month if you're on the front, and to get this money, you have to be included in the daily order, where it's 8,000 rubles per day. And in the assault unit, capture the area along with others, a kilometer is paid 50,000 rubles. Those who die will not receive this money. Those who cover a kilometer will get it, unless at the same time an order comes out for the second kilometer, and the money for the ministry will still add up, because it won't be paid out at all. And now we have an example. It is possible. Tolik, some Tolik, 18 years old, was born during Putin's time. Completely, so to speak, brainwashed, right? He signs the contract on August 22nd under propaganda. 27 during training, I will kill Ukrainians. On August 29th, I happily drink with my colleagues. We are going to Kursk. September 11th. The fucking battalion commander is pushing us into shit. September 12th. I don't want to go. Maybe this is my last day. September 14th. Tolik is dead. 24 days, without proper training, without pay, and that's it.
And the account adds up. The state is happy.
And the account adds up. The state will not pay.
Exactly, in short. The slogans that you will get money for signing the contract are absolute fakes, lies. And it's no surprise that at this moment there are fewer and fewer willing people. But there have been voices from propagandists that it is better for Russia to hire mercenaries and send them to fight than to take men from industry, as they are sinking the economy.
Yes, and that's why Volodin supported Gurulev's proposal to mobilize women to factories so that specialists could, attention, no longer fight at the front, but repair equipment and increase combat readiness behind the front. And who instead? Brotherly North Korea. Here we have it. Sitao de Tsopong, citing sources from South Korea, reported that the monthly salary of South and North Korean soldiers in Russia will amount to $2,000, which is 23 times the average income in Pyongyang.
Average monthly or typically annual income, or?
No. That is actually the annual income. Yes, that is an annual income. So here.
How much of that will the aforementioned North Korean volunteers see? The party definitely needs to be nourished.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of North Korea commented on the report about the deployment of North Korean troops in Russia, stating that there is no information on this matter, but if it is true, it is in accordance with international law. This follows from the experience of the deputy head of the Foreign Policy Department of the DPRK regarding Russian affairs, Kim Jong-il, published by the state agency KCNA. We have noted the rumors about the deployment of the Korean People's Army in Russia, which global media are using to shape public opinion. That's how it started. He did not confirm the sending of troops to the Russian Federation, as he noted that the Foreign Policy Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs does not interfere in matters that fall under the competence of the Ministry of National Defense. If what the global media are saying turns out to be true, it will be an act in accordance with the norms of international law. That's what he said. And what is very interesting,
The Russians also say similar things on this topic.
what is very interesting, the Russians themselves claim that it is actually between 1,500 and 3,000 people. They are being trained, and they are being trained in exactly 4 units: Ussurisk, Baranovsk, Ussurisk, Dongus, which is Autanuda, Katerinoslavka, and Prince Volkonsky in the Khabarovsk region, in the Primorsky region. 4 training centers in total, from 1,500 to 3,000 people. It is said that these are units from the 11th Army, which is a very specific army, practically the army that is the VDV of North Korea. But also interestingly, because I looked into it, the 11th Army is also connected to cyber warfare units, that is, hackers. I think that North Korean hackers would be gladly engaged by Russia. Why? Because they have decimated their own IT specialists, and some have fled. And they are already having problems with attacks because their assets that were in the West are currently all falling in terms of cyber warfare due to the actions of the Five Eyes, their people. So here there are arrests, which is why all attacks are starting to take place from Russian territory, and there are too few people, too few trained. There are too few IT specialists trained in cybersecurity operations. That is, hacking. Well, there would be well-trained hackers from North Korea, and perhaps indeed from the 11th Army. They will be directed there. They will operate within the Russians. However, regarding the 11th Army, General Pytel stated that they are indeed very well trained and can indeed pose problems for the Ukrainians. But there is one issue that the Russians themselves mention. Indeed, 1 in 30 in the unit, they have positions. For every 30 people there should be 1 translator and 2 officers who know Korean in any way. And here, Tolik wonders, where will we get so many? There is no chance. And here John Happ mentions in detail that in the military, of course, as expected, relying on. According to South Korean intelligence, in the North Korean army, 1 in 80 knows any language, and it is either Chinese or Russian, because 1 in 80 has lived on the border. So what will happen here is that even if fully staffed units are indeed directed with North Koreans, there will be an incredible communication problem. Incredible. And command. So what does John Happ say? That is, South Korea. Well, we expect that if so, due to communication difficulties, these Koreans will be directed to meet assaults because there is no need to issue special orders. Just give them the order to take that village, and how many will return from that assault is another matter.
And now returning to those meat assaults made in North Korea, one thing must be said. There was a situation where a forward detachment of 60 soldiers ended up in the Kursk area, and they went to train Russian soldiers, exchanging skills. After they finished, it turned out that they took all their toys, meaning weapons, and left them in some grove, because why deal with them without food, without water, without even the possibility of camping, zero equipment, and so on. So it ended with some of them finding themselves 60 kilometers away. After a few days, supposedly looking for Russian commanders to know what to do with themselves, starving, frostbitten, and so on. As a reward, they were treated as deserters, captured by Russian security services, and in the first instance, with the consent of the high-ranking officials of North Korea, they will voluntarily participate in meat assault number 1.
No. But we know that the Ukrainian command has already published a Ukrainian Korean tutorial emphasizing this North Korean form of Korean. What is it about? Because information about individual deserters began to gradually flow in from some units. The fundamental question is whether they are deserters or agents.
Yes, anything is possible. It is quite possible that these heavily indoctrinated North Korean soldiers ended up here, and they must not be trusted at all.
Even when they surrender. Even when they surrender. Exactly. So we will see how it will look. It does not look good for the North Koreans at all. I expect that Jonhap is indeed right here, citing South Korean intelligence, and that soon they will experience real meat assaults, which the Russian command will gladly send, saving their own boys.
There is indeed a lot of contempt for these North Korean soldiers on Telegram. Yes, and the enumeration that they are a walking breeding ground for bacteria and all sorts of pests lurking in the human body.
It will rather be at full capacity, and no one will cry over them. And the opinion that Kim is getting rid of unnecessary mouths to feed is already common in Russian military groups.
That's right. But who would deny the logic of such behavior, seeing well what Putin is doing with his subordinates, right?
Exactly. And in connection with this...
Still about this, listen, if it will be 12,000 soldiers, it won't change much.
These are brigades from the Throne A.
Yes, but it's about something else. He will be collecting $2,000 per head from this. Is this turning into a piece of millions of dollars on a monthly scale? He could collect about $24 million.
For the needs of his little sister. And I think he will be very closely watching to ensure the money flows to him.
Of course. Goods are goods.
Art is art. Yes, indeed it is, as it should be.
And they know about it. That's right. With this note, we can conclude today's first meeting of the week. We'll let you know when the second one will be. Probably we'll even try to make it on Wednesday, exceptionally. To end this month, yes, and not otherwise. And remember, I said if you can, then if I am able, yes. We are organizing a trip with Exen. We will go. I am planning to go there once again this year, so it will be...
In December, probably, because November is for December. Yes. Well, as I said, if my medical forces allow, especially since I would like the medical forces to allow me to attend the next reserve training, because once you say A, and you get that A, then you have to say B. Well, in any case, that's how it looks.
And we, my dear, at this moment remind you that you have thumbs up. You can if you have more time, you can comment. We also encourage you to support our online creation. By supporting us, you have the tools for this in the form of Ko-fi, a column, Patreon, YouTube. In the video description, there are also fundraising campaigns. Due to the fact that, for example, today's one, which will be released shortly as we record this, is made as WSI material for, I don't know what, again, demonetization, because showing facts related to certain issues concerning Georgia or the zone of decay. What remains for me, what doesn't kill me, makes me stronger. So, dear friends, remember, it is thanks to you and doing this for you that it all makes sense, and it is possible because of you. Przem and Wobek, so two dome-shaped figures say goodbye, Marek Meissner and Marek Lisowski. Przem and Wobek, until we hear from each other, see you, bye.